എല്ലാവർക്കും നമസ്കാരം. എന്തുകൊണ്ട് കേരളത്തിൽ വീണ്ടും ഒരു ഇടതുപക്ഷ സർക്കാർ അധികാരത്തിൽ വരണം? ഈ ചോദ്യത്തിൻ്റെ ഉത്തരത്തിലേക്ക് വിരൽ ചൂണ്ടുന്ന പ്രമുഖ വ്യക്തിത്വങ്ങളുടെ പ്രഭാഷണ പരമ്പരയാണ് ചിന്താ പബ്ലിഷേഴ്സ് സംഘടിപ്പിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളത്. ട്രൈ കോണ്ടിനെൻ്റൽ സെൻറ്റർ ഫോർ സോഷ്യൽ റിസർച്ച് സെൻറ്റർ എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ് ഡയറക്ടറും ലെഫ്റ്റ് ചീഫ് എഡിറ്ററുമായ വിജയപ്രസാദ്, ഏഷ്യൻ കോളേജ് ഓഫ് ജേർണലിസം ചെയർമാൻ ശശികുമാർ, ഫ്രണ്ട് ലൈൻ എഡിറ്റർ എൻ റാം, എഴുത്തുകാരനും കവിയുമായ സച്ചിദാനന്ദൻ, പീപ്പിൾസ് ഹെൽത്ത് മൂവ്മെൻറ്റ് ഗ്ലോബൽ കോർഡിനേറ്റർ ഡോക്ടർ ടി സുന്ദർരാമൻ, ഇന്ത്യൻ എൻവയോൺമെൻറ്റൽ ആക്ടിവിസ്റ്റ് ഡോക്ടർ വന്ദന ശിവ, ന്യൂസ് ക്ലിക്ക് ഫൗണ്ടർ എഡിറ്റർ പ്രബീർ പുക്കസ്തായ എന്നിവർ വിവിധ ദിവസങ്ങളിലായി പ്രഭാഷണത്തിൽ നമ്മോടൊപ്പം പങ്കുചേരുന്നുണ്ട്. എല്ലാവർക്കും ഈ പരിപാടിയിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം.
Coming Kerala Legislative Assembly elections will turn out to be a straight fight, a more or less straight fight between what I would call the left front and the right front. It's actually LDF versus UDF, but UDF is, which is led by the Congress party. Its position in Kerala is virtually indistinguishable from the BJP and the RSS's positions on many issues. So it will be only accurate to characterize this as the left versus right, or left and democratic versus right and undemocratic. That's how I see it, looking at it objectively. Kerala, of course, is well recognized what Kerala has achieved over the decades. Kerala is in a different league from other Indian states with respect to social indicators, with respect to human development. All the indicators point to Kerala being in a different league, much above the rest. But the interesting point that Professor Amartya Sen, our Nobel laureate, made in the concluding session of the Kerala Looks Ahead conclave, virtual conclave, was it was not always so. In fact, he says when he returned from the UK in 1963, he took up a teaching position in the Delhi School of Economics. Kerala was one of the poorest states. But the first elected communist government in the world was in place, and Kerala had already shown the way to the future, which was to focus on people-centric development, human development, valuing labor, working people's contribution, and so on. And soon enough, Kerala emerged among the top with respect to per capita income. This is a point he makes very powerfully and persuasively in that speech. So it was not always so. It was hard won. There are, of course, social movements preceding the coming to power of the Communist Party, the EMS government. But what was added was land reforms and a whole type of development which focused on people and on democratic ways. What Professor Sen has very eloquently described as reliance on humanity, reasoning, and public debate, public issues being debated. And this is the way Kerala achieved its tremendous social development, and this is the way it will happen in future. And today, the LDF government, led by Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, has very strongly underlined the importance of these factors. What makes Kerala, with respect to social indicators, the most advanced state in India, in fact, in a league of its own. No other state comes close. Having said that, Kerala still needs a lot of work to do. And as Finance Minister Thomas Isaac pointed out in a recent interview to Vijay Prashad, this habit in Kerala of alternating, people choosing one and then the other the next time, has cost a lot in terms of social development. Even though he is part of the LDF, I think this is an objective view that if you give a government only 5 years, and then a government with a totally opposite policy position or approach to development comes into power, a government which is not secular, a government which doesn't believe in inclusive development, a government which is highly opportunistic, if that comes to power, then naturally what has been undertaken by the government in the previous 5-year term would get stopped, would get interrupted, would get distorted. And this has cost the people of Kerala quite a lot. But 10 years, as Dr. Isaac points out, is a pretty good time where you give a chance to somebody to prove that they are up to the challenge. And I think that's very, very important. And the other thing that has been shown very, very clearly here is in this particular term, the LDF government, and in particular, the leadership of Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, both the government and in the party, they have made a huge difference to how various crises have been handled in this particular term. Let us look at the facts. The after effects of Cyclone Oki in 2017, the Nipah virus outbreak in 2018. Not only that, the same year, floods in 2018 and again in 2019. And then from early 2020, when the first case in India was detected in Kerala, the COVID-19 pandemic. No government has been confronted or faced with such a succession of crises, and the government's mettle has been tested by its response to the crisis. Not just the government, not just state action, but a lot of social solidarity, people's efforts, voluntary efforts. That is combined with the leading role played by the state, the strong role played by the state, led by a very determined and purposeful chief minister to respond to the challenge. And I think in every one of these crises, Kerala has done exceedingly well. And today, when you talk about, of course, there have been a large number of cases in Kerala, not a surprise given the fact that Keralites return, particularly from the Middle East, and the government was determined to welcome them and provide care for them after taking due safeguards. So the number of cases has been considerable. And out of 1.1 million cases of COVID-19, the recovery rate has been exemplary, 97.34%. And even today, there are active cases, more than 24,000. But what is remarkable is, thanks to the care provided, food, shelter, nobody would starve, nobody would go without access to health or shelter. Because of the treatment, the case fatality rate is one of the lowest in the world, 0.41% of those who were diagnosed with COVID-19 died. Of course, too many died. We don't want even one person to die from this pandemic, but it has been able to keep the number down. As for vaccination, it has been very active. There's a shortage of vaccines initially, but more than 2 million people have been already vaccinated. Not all of them have got the second dose, but this is rising. And against constraints, I think the government has been very, very active in pushing for vaccination. I learned from friends that 4 or 5 things made a big difference this time in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. That was the policy decision made by the LDF government on these essential things, indispensable things. One, no one would go hungry and without a safety net of essential commodities and services. Migrant workers were also looked after, and I think the press has, the news media have acknowledged that, and of the number of state-run shelter homes or camps, Kerala was by far the leading performer in the country, far ahead of any other state. So no one would go hungry and without a safety net. Two, nobody would go without shelter. That's where the migrants come in. Three, everyone would have access to the health system with its 3 tiers. And 4, equally important, there would be a free and continuous flow of information. Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan's daily press conferences were a model for other states. Not every chief minister in the country did it, very few did. And there was constant communication from the government, between the government and the people, that I think built a lot of trust in how the crisis was being handled. So I think this is very important. Having said this, what about the future? I think that's going to be very important. It's not just, the government won't be elected just on its past achievements. It also has to indicate, give a blueprint for what it seeks to do in future. And in this case, the next 5 years. And I think already, to sum up, Kerala tops in Niti Aayog Sustainable Development Goal. Kerala is consistently number 1 in India in the field of health among states. Kerala is the best governed state in India as per the Public Affairs Index 2020. Kerala, family health centers in Kerala are in the top 12 in the National Quality Assurance Standard. Kerala is the least corrupt state in the country. And despite attempts by the Congress Party and the BJP to try to assail the record of the LDF government, people recognize that Kerala is clearly the least corrupt state in the country. A, the government is like that, and 2, people won't put up with corruption more than in most other states. So all those help to ensure this. And I think the 2 or 3 things stand out. There's already been good progress, but there will be a much better situation if the LDF government is allowed to is voted back to power by the people of Kerala. And why do I say this? There are 2 crucial areas where there needs to, you have to build on the foundations, on the progress already made. One is in this field of school education. And I think it's a remarkable thing that over the last 4 years, there has been great progress in developing the quality of education in government and aided schools. And there's actually a large number of children have been shifted by their parents from non-aided private schools to government schools and aided schools aided by the government. And I think this is quite remarkable, this effort. And this needs to go forward. The school system, education is a key. Professor Amartya Sen has emphasized it in that address that I referred to. But there has to be further progress, and almost 7 lakh additional children have come from the private to the government and government-aided sector, so far as school education is concerned. And this, I think, is a tribute to what has taken place over the last 4 or 5 years, 4 years specifically in this area. And I think a lot of work needs to be done to raise the quality of education at the school level and also in the field of higher education. I think that's going to be very important. The second key thing is to upgrade the public health system in Kerala. And I think a very good start has been made by transforming public health centers into family health centers. It's quite an ambitious goal. And I think the idea that each family health center will have at all times, 3 doctors and 4 nurses, every one of them. That's quite an ambitious goal, because it's not easy in many states to get doctors to stay in rural areas and remote areas and so on. There are many PHCs in different other states where there are no doctors at all, and nurses, not enough nurses either. So I think this assurance, is going to be very important. And also, this a list of 53 common medical conditions to be managed at PHC level. This was made available, and I think again it's being monitored very carefully. And the plans to upgrade hospitals, taluk hospitals, district hospitals, and also major hospitals, I think this is going to deliver very, very good results. And so I think this people-centric development continues to be a big theme, a big element in the program of the LDF, all the allies led by the Communist Party of India, Marxist. And housing and livelihood mission, that's, I think, very important. The other thing that needs to be done, that waits to be done, is industrial development. Kerala has done very well with respect to welfare, which is why the social indicators are so good. It has done quite well over the decades with respect to development of the economy, which is why in terms of per capita income, it's ahead of many other states. But infrastructure development needs to be undertaken on a much bigger basis. And so far, the approved infrastructure development projects approved for the Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund Board is already crossed 60,000 crores. It's actually 60,401 crores. And this has to be realized. This has to be fructified in the coming period. There have been attempts from the center to work against it. But I think it is a very imaginative way. When states do not have enough revenue or sources of revenue, they are burdened with a lot of tasks. All the development tasks are in the domain of the state. But so far as revenues are concerned, the bulk is in the hands of the central government. This is not just the present government. It's a process of historical development. And in response, Kerala, the government of Kerala, and in particular the LDF, in fact, in this case, the LDF alone, has pioneered these new instruments like the KIIFB and so on, and a very ambitious plan, a blueprint for a very ambitious type of development has been presented. It will involve an internet super highway, providing access to the internet to all, free, particularly for the poor, making Kerala a totally, internet-empowered state. This is a very ambitious objective. Better roads, power, uninterrupted supply of power, and focus on industries, knowledge-based industries. That's going to be a big ask. And if by mischance, another government with a completely different ideology, which is on the right, which is opportunistic, comes into place, then obviously social advancement will be badly injured, it will be badly affected, it will be interrupted, and it makes no sense. And it is for this reason that one wants a break in the long-standing pattern in Kerala, so that in this case, the LDF government, led by a very determined and purposeful chief minister, who is a very strong leader, but a leader who consults, who's consultative, who tries to persuade people through science, through reasoning, kind of things that Professor Amartya Sen emphasized, focus on humanity, focus on public reasoning, focus on debate and public action, involving the people. That's what citizenship was all about. Citizenship is about the relationship of the state to its citizens. And it has to be equal, based on the principle of equality. It has to respect their rights, the rights of every individual and groups also. So that's, I think, very important. But finally, what distinguishes the LDF from the UDF, the left front from the right, is this: the left front, or the LDF, believes in an inclusive, secular society where everyone, pluralistic society where everyone is respected. Kerala has a very large minority population. So you have to build upon the basis that is already there, a basis where there is respect for pluralism, respect for diversity, respect for the rights of all citizens, regardless of language, caste, creed, gender, anything, everything, the principle of equality. And today, when there is so much toxic communalism, the politics of hate, politics of mobilizing religious sentiment for political ends, for electoral ends, it is important to back those who stand for the core values set out in the preamble to the Indian Constitution: justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. If you believe in these things, then the choice is very clear. The LDF has to come back to power, and the people of Kerala would be making a good choice, the only choice that makes sense today, if they vote the LDF back to power with a clear majority, with a clear mandate, with a strong mandate for the LDF government as well as for Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan.